Hello. This video is you do not need science to believe in the soul or God. If you believe in the soul, believing in God, I don't think is farther behind. It's mainly the soul for this argument, because atheists are the ones who don't believe in the soul. They do not believe that anything exists beyond the little electronic firings inside of your brain. And that's what creates all of your emotions and all of your imagination and everything. It's from this thing of meat right here in your head. And atheists like to say, oh, there's no scientific proof of the soul at all. And there's plenty of scientific proof of the soul. That's not what this video is about, but I will get a little bit sidetracked and mention some of those. How about all of the past life books that have been written? Lots of past life books and stories of past lives. People remembering their past lives and knowing stuff that there's no way that they could have known that. Like a kid who described World War II planes and where the wheels went and the insides of the aircraft carrier, and he knew his name and he knew his friend's name from World War II, and he died in a crash on the aircraft carrier. So they took him to his old friend who's like 88 years old, and they reminisced about old times, and he knew stuff, and everybody believed after that. And that's not the only story. There's plenty of stories like that. You just have to do the research. They don't give you those books to read in high school, so you don't read it. And then having not read those books doesn't mean that those books don't exist and that those aren't actual scientific reasons for it. And you can do scientific tests. You can find people who claim to have experience of past lives and then do the test, ask them this, and document it. But there have been actually tests with America's Best Psychic, that TV show. I don't know if they still have it, but they had a couple seasons of it, and you saw right there on TV the stuff that those psychic people could do. They'd put somebody in a car lot filled with hundreds of cars in a trunk, and they'd be like, all right, which one is he in? And they'd go right to it. Or where is he buried on this acreage of like 15, 30 acres of land? Where's he buried? And they'd go right to it. And they tell stuff about what happened in a room before, and this is on TV. And they're telling you, well, that's me talking to the higher forces. The spirits are telling me. How else would they know? An atheist might say, oh, it's some kind of radio vibration that exists out there, that it's not alive though. It's not alive. Well, it has to be alive in the same way that we're alive, if it's communicating with those psychic people. And if we're alive, then they're alive in the same way we're alive. So if you can admit that we're alive, then you'd have to admit that they're alive. Then you have to admit that there's something out there. And it shouldn't be that much of a jump to believe that you can become that, especially when those things tell you that they used to be human. Psychic people telling you. Spirits going through people and telling you that stuff. That's science. It's a definition of science. Then there's other prayer experiments, the mind detector. I don't know exactly how that worked. I'll research it some more, but it spiked on 9/11. Non-locality experiments, have you feel angry or feel happy, and then DNA that somebody took out of your blood that's 2,000 miles away now is actually unraveling and shriveling up. It's because it's still connected to you. Random number generators from little chickens squawking at the robot because they thought it was his mother. And the robot goes where the random number tells it to go, and it would eventually start going towards the chickens. There's a book called The Field by Lynn McTaggart. I never actually read it because I got it at the library and then I lost it. I'll try and get it at this library and read it. But it lists all those scientific experiments. But that's not what this video is about. You don't need scientific experiments to, if you refuse to look at those because you've got other stuff going on in your life. You don't even need those to believe in the soul. and the afterlife, and that you exist when you die, and God and everything. Because it's believing in that is, believing in the soul is consistent with everything else that exists in the world. I think I've done this video a bunch of times talking about the same thing, but in this world, everything leads into something else. There's never, nothing just pops out of thin air. We have an alphabet that was developed over thousands of years from Latin, from the Romans and the Greeks, and our society grows every year. It grows and gets more and more complex, and so we as people would have to get more and more complex as well. You know, you die and then you keep going. That's one example. Another example would be cars. You buy a car and then it gets old, and then you get rid of the car, and then you buy another car. That's what our bodies are. It's something we live in, we're driving around in, and then it gets old, and then we get another one. We don't just die. It's not one law of the universe is that everything is equal, or that's a law of logic. Every human should have equal rights. The scientific laws. If two things weigh the same and they come crashing each other, they're going to bounce farther apart at the same speed and distance. There's consistency to that. And if there is consistency, then why would the natural world have poor people and rich people? It would be unfair for the poor people if the only life that they ever live before they blink out of existence and become nothing is of pain their whole life. And then somebody else, they're happy their whole life and then they blink out. That's not equal. And that goes against that simple basic rule. It's not fair to them. And that's also an argument you could give to fundamentalist Christians and Muslims who think that you only live once on this world and then go to heaven. That's ridiculous. You go to heaven, and what? What do you do when you're up in heaven talking about your life on earth? Oh yeah, I had an evil, bad life on earth. I had a good life. Oh, well, it doesn't matter because now we're in heaven. Doing what? Oh, have you noticed fundamentalist Christians have never even talked about what life is like in heaven? They don't even want to talk about it. Can't talk about it. But this video is that you don't need proof. Now, atheists are people who don't believe in the soul, who believe the soul does not exist. At least that's my definition. Atheists like to be really slippery with the definition so that they don't ever have to actually have an argument. They just change the definition when you define them. Then you'll define the new definition for them, and then they'll be like, oh, that's not the definition, the other definition. So basically an atheist is somebody who believes, who doesn't not believe or isn't undecided. Those are the agnostics. Somebody who believes that there's no soul. I think people are atheists because they are reacting against the abuses of religion, of the fundamentalist Christians. They're reacting against the fundamentalist Christians being crazy. We're just as crazy as the atheists, I think, saying that you live here once and then you're going to burn in hell for all of eternity, go to heaven for all of eternity. And then they think about all the people who talked about, who sold entrance into heaven for money and burned people at the stake for not being in the right religion, and caused wars, invading other countries, like the Crusades in the name of a religion or your religious founder, and they thought that that was all crazy. So they're very simple-minded and one-track-minded and don't look at the details and just go, oh, well, then religion is bad. All religion is bad, therefore there is no God. I will throw it all out. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is no soul. When you die, there is nothing. People didn't believe that before the abuses of Catholic religion or the abuses of fundamentalists who condemn people to hell and burn them at the stake. Animism and shamanism, these guys believe in spirits. They're always channeling spirits and ghosts and think that spirits live in trees and all waterfalls and everywhere. Native Americans, all those religions believe that the universe is alive and the spirits are out there and everywhere, and that's God. And that's the existence of your afterlife. We've always believed that. We only invented the idea of atheism after people started to react against fundamentalist Christians and Muslims. And so now we have the atheists who are so hell-bent on not believing in any of the religion. It's like in a past life they were those fundamentalist Christians, and now they're so disgusted with themselves in their past life that they have to kind of go way off in the other direction and believe that there's no soul. Another argument atheists give, and this is a reason to believe that there is an afterlife, that there is no afterlife. An argument that they give is there's no use. It doesn't do you any good in your daily life to believe that there's an afterlife, or to believe in God, that the spirit world out there exists and is alive. And it does help. People who are criminals are atheists. Or, of the other end of the spectrum, like the mafias, the Catholics, they think that we're all headed to hell anyway, so we might as well have fun while we're here. Atheists or criminals and people who do bad stuff have no faith. They don't think that there's any consequences to their actions because they're all headed to hell anyway. Or they're not going to exist when they're done, so they might as well have fun in the only life that they're here and do whatever the hell they want and can get away with because it doesn't matter. If they believed that they would live into another life when they die and keep going, then, and it's like one big life and this is just another segment of your life, then they would eventually have to atone for all the sins that they committed in this life, just like in this life. If you're in this life and you spend a bunch of years smoking cigarettes, then in the future you're going to have to deal with the consequences of that. And it's the same thing with the afterlife. And just because, and that's reason enough that actions you have now that you perpetrate now have consequences in the future of this life. That will happen, in the afterlife and other lifetimes as well. It's inconsistent to think that it all just ends, but it's also destructive to believe that it all ends. If you look at any of these or ask any of these criminals, none of the criminals are going to be religious and think that there's an afterlife and you get to live forever and that you can do whatever you want. The criminals all those criminal behavior that those fundamentalist churches and Bloody Mary burning 300 people on the stake, that was the bad part of religion, thinking that people are going to burn in hell for all of eternity. But if you take that bad stuff out, you take that insanity away and believe that we're all going to heaven anyways and we're all going to get reincarnated into a new life on this earth or in another earth, it takes the need away to perpetrate crimes and try to send other people to hell. And that's a reason. Some people might go, oh, that's not a reason. That's just I don't know what you would label that, but like false psychology. But it is. It's perfectly When that's why I think people like are born again in fundamentalist religion. They do it and then they think that they're going to go to heaven, but they don't want to deal with the consequences of the bad stuff they did. So they just pray to their God, their Jesus, and they go to heaven. But if you could just take that whole, you know, idea that there's just one heaven and you get to reincarnate over and over and over again in different lives, then it could have that idea, that religious idea of believing in the soul can have this positive effect on ex-criminals and people with problems, as being born again can. It helps people. And anything that helps people is also true. It's kind of hard to wrap your mind around the idea that whatever helps you is also true. But whatever you dream of and think that's better for you in your future, in this life, well, you dream and you think that it's better for you because it is. And the proof of that is when you do your things to do whatever you want. Study to become a doctor, and then you become a doctor, and you're happy and you're glad you did it, well, that's proof. So, and so you don't need science. And you have no reason to not believe in the soul. We've always believed in the soul. And believing that the soul doesn't exist, that is a religion, by the way. There's no escaping having a religion, unless you're going to become an agnostic. And that's why there's a difference between atheism and an agnosticism. Agnostics are like, don't talk to me about that. Okay. But atheists insist on calling themselves atheists. So as long as you insist on calling yourself an atheist instead of an agnostic, then you believe, and that's your religion. People will be like, oh, atheism is not a religion. Yeah, it is. New Age is a religion. Are there any leaders in New Age? No. You don't need to have leaders in churches and pay tithes to have a religion. A religion is a bunch of people who agree, or somebody who believes something, and a bunch of people who happen to believe the same thing. The religion of atheism, it's a religion. The religion of New Ageism, it's a religion. Even though there's no leaders. Buddhism, it's a religion. I don't understand why so many people say that Buddhism isn't a religion. It's just as much of a religion as Christianity. They've got all more rites and rituals and stuff than Christianity does. So, anyways, I think that's enough.